Best wishes, dear children. How are you today? I hope you all are doing well and good at your places. So, dear children, today we are going to study chapter 2 from your social studies book for class 10, Understanding Economic Development. The title of the chapter is Sectors of the Indian Economy. Dear children, an economy is best understood when we study its sectors or components. By sectors is meant which kind of services are being rendered, or in other words, what kind of workmen are playing how much contributing role in that economy. Dear children, in an economy, its sectors hold a lot of importance, or it can be said that economy depends on the criteria of profit earned from these sectors. So, children, let's study the sectors of economy. So, dear children, when you will look around and see people working, you will find them engaged in various economic activities. Out of these, some activities are of goods production and some others are producing services. These activities are happening and they keep on happening around us. How do we understand these activities? To understand these activities, we need to study these by adopting some methods. We make some criteria as a base. So, what are these criteria on the basis of which different sectors are grouped in? Let us try to know how these sectors are grouped on the basis of aims or objectives. There are many activities that are undertaken directly by using natural resources. For example, the cultivation of cotton. It is a seasonal crop. For the growth of the cotton plant, we depend mainly, but not entirely, on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine, and climate. The product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Similarly, in the case of an activity like dairy, we are dependent on the biological processes of animals and availability of fodder, etc. The product here, that is milk, is also a natural product. Similarly, minerals and ores are also natural products. So, children, when we produce a good by exploiting natural resources, it is an activity of primary sector. Why primary? This is because it forms the base for all other products that we subsequently make. Since most of the natural products we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, this sector is also called agriculture and related sector. The secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with industrial activities. It is next step after primary. The product is produced by nature but has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is essential. This could be in a factory or a workshop or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from the plant, we spin yarn and weave cloth. Using sugarcane as raw material, we make sugar and jaggery. We convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since this sector gradually became associated with different kinds of industries that came up, it is also called industrial sector. After primary and secondary, there is a third category of activities that falls under the tertiary sector and is different from the above two. These are activities that help in the development of the primary and the secondary sectors. These activities by themselves do not produce a good, but they are an aid or a support for the production process. For example, goods that are produced in the primary or the secondary sector would need to be transported by trucks or trains and then sold in the wholesale and retail shops. At times, it may be necessary to store these in godowns. We also may need to talk to others over telephone or send letters to borrow money from banks or to help the production and trade. Transport, storage, communication, banking, trade are some examples of tertiary activities. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. Children, service sector also includes some essential services that may not directly help the production of the goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, and those who provide personal services such as washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers, and people to do administrative and accounting works. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc. have become important. Hence, all these services have also been associated with the tertiary sector. So, dear children, to have a better understanding of this, let us compare all these sectors. The various production activities in the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors produce a very large number of goods and services. Also, the three sectors have a large number of people working in them to produce these goods and services. The next step, therefore, is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people work in each sector. In an economy, there could be one or more sectors which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, while other sectors are relatively small in size. So, dear children, you must be thinking that it is an impossible task to count these thousands of goods and services. Not only would the task be enormous, you might also wonder how we can add up cars and computers and nails and furniture. It won't make sense because estimation of this type is not an easy task. Children, you are right in thinking so. To get around this problem, economists suggest that values of the goods and services should be used rather than adding up the actual numbers. For example, if 10,000 kilograms of wheat is sold at rupees 8 per kg, the value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 10 per kg coconut will be 50,000. Similarly, the value of goods and services in three sectors are calculated and then added up. Remember, there is one precaution one has to take. Not every good or service that is produced and sold needs to be counted. It makes sense only to include the final goods and services. Take, for instance, a farmer who sells wheat to a flour mill for rupees 8 per kg. The mill grinds the wheat and sells the flour to the biscuit company for rupees 10 per kg. The biscuit company uses the flour and things such as sugar and oil to make 4 packets of biscuits. It sells biscuits in the market to the consumers for rupees 60, that is 15 rupees per packet. Biscuits are the final goods, that is goods that reach the consumers. Now the question arises, Why are only final goods and services counted? In contrast to the final goods, goods such as wheat and the wheat flour in this example are intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of the final goods already includes the value of all the intermediate goods that are used in making the final product. Hence, the value of rupees 60 for the biscuits, that is the final product, already includes the value of the flour, that is rupees 10. Similarly, the value of all other intermediate goods would have been included in it. To count the value of the flour and wheat separately is therefore not correct, because then we would be counting the value of the same things a number of times, first as wheat, then as flour, and finally as biscuits. So the value of the final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides total production of the sector for that year. And the sum of production of the three sectors gives what is called gross domestic product or GDP of the country. Now, dear children, this is very important concept to understand. So, what is gross domestic product? So, answer to this question is the sum of production in all the three sectors gives gross domestic product of a country. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. GDP shows how big the economy is. Dear children, in India, the mammoth task of measuring GDP is undertaken by central government ministry. This ministry, with the help of various government departments of all Indian states and union territories, collects information relating to total volume of goods and services and their prices, and then estimates the GDP. GDP, that means gross domestic product. Historical change in sectors. Generally, it has been noted from the histories of many now developed countries that at initial stages of development, primary sector was the most important sector of economic activity. As the methods of farming changed, the agriculture sector began to prosper. It produced much more food than before. Many people could now take up other activities. There were increasing number of craftspersons and traders. Buying and selling activities increased many times. Besides, there were also transporters, administrators, army, etc. However, at this stage, most of the goods produced were natural products from the primary sector, and most people were also employed in this sector. Over a long time, and especially because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, factories came up and started expanding. Those people who had earlier worked on farms now began to work in factories in large numbers. They were forced to do so, as you read in your history chapters. People began to use many more goods that were produced in factories at cheap rates. Secondary sector gradually became the most important in total production and employment. Hence, over a time, a shift had taken place. This means that the importance of the sectors had changed. In the past 100 years, there has been a further shift from secondary to tertiary sector in developed countries. The service sector has become the most important in terms of total production. Most of the working people are also employed in service sector. This is the general pattern observed in developed countries. Rising importance of the tertiary sector in production. Over the 40 years between 1973-74 and 2013-14, while the production in all the three sectors has increased, it has increased the most in the tertiary sector. As a result, in the year 2013-14, the tertiary sector has emerged as the largest producing sector in India, replacing the primary sector. Why is the tertiary sector becoming so important in India? There could be several reasons. First, in any country, several services such as hospitals, educational institutions, post and telegraph services, police stations, courts, village administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transport, banks, insurance companies, etc. are required. These can be considered as basic services. In the developing country, the government has to take responsibility for the provision of these services. Second, the development of agriculture and industry leads to the development of services such as transport, trade, storage, and the like, as we have already seen. Greater the development of the primary and the secondary sectors, more would be the demand for such services. Third, as income levels rise, certain sections of the people start demanding many more services like eating out, tourism, shopping, private hospitals, private schools, professional training, etc. You can see this change quite sharply in cities, especially in big cities. Fourth, over the past decade or so, certain new services such as those based on information and communication technology have become important and essential. The production of these services has been rising rapidly. However, you must remember that not all the service sector is growing equally well. Service sector in India employs many different kinds of people. At one end, there are a limited number of services that employ highly skilled and educated workers. At the other end, there are a very large number of workers engaged in services such as small shopkeepers, repair persons, transport persons, etc. These people barely manage to earn a living and yet they perform these services because no alternative opportunities for work are available to them. Hence, only a part of this sector is growing in importance. Where are most of the people employed? A remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the three sectors in gross domestic product, a similar shift has not taken place in employment. The primary sector continues to be the largest employer ever now. Why didn't a similar shift out of primary sector happen in case of employment? It is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sectors. Even though industrial output or the production of goods went up by more than 9 times during the period, employment in the industry went up by around 3 times. The same applies to the tertiary sector as well. While production in the service sector rose by 14 times, employment in service sector rose around 5 times. As a result, more than half of the workers in the country are working in primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only about 1/6 of gross domestic product. In contrast to this, the secondary and the tertiary sectors produce the rest of the produce, whereas they employ less about half the people. Does this mean that the workers in the agriculture are not producing as much as they could? What it means is that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So, even if you move a few people out, production will not be affected. In other words, workers in the agricultural sectors are underemployed. For instance, take the case of a small farmer, Lakshmi, owing about 2 hectares of unirrigated land dependent only on rain and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in a plot throughout the year. Why? They have nowhere else to go for work. They will see that everyone is working. None remains idle. But in actual fact, their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment, where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is also called disguised unemployment. Now, supposing a landlord, Sukram, comes and hires 1 or 2 members of the family to work on his land, Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages. Since you do not need 5 people to look after that small plot, 2 people moving out does not affect the production on their farm. In the above example, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earnings of the family would increase and they would also continue to produce as much from their land. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if we remove a lot of people from agricultural sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agricultural production will not suffer. The incomes of the people who take up other work would increase the total family income. This underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sector in urban areas who search for daily employment. They are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons, and others doing odd jobs. Many of them don't find work every day. Similarly, we see other people of the service sector on the street pushing a cart or selling something where they may spend the whole day but earn very little. They are doing this work because they do not have better opportunities. How to create more employment? A study conducted by the erstwhile Planning Commission, now known as NITI Aayog, estimates that nearly 20 lakh jobs can be created in the education sector alone. Similarly, if we are to improve the health situation, we need many more doctors, nurses, health workers, etc. to work in the rural areas. These are some ways by which jobs would be created and we would be able to address the important aspects of development. Every state or region has potential for increasing the income and employment for the people in that area. It could be tourism or regional craft industry or new services like IT or information technology. Some of these would require proper planning and support from the government. For example, the same study by Planning Commission says that if tourism as a sector is improved, every year we can give additional employment to more than 35 lakh people. We must realize that some of the suggestions discussed above would take a long time to implement. For short term, we need some quick measures. Recognizing this, the central government of India made a law implementing the right to work in about 625 districts of India. It is called Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005. Under this, All those who are able to and are in the need of work in the rural areas are guaranteed 100 days of employment in a year by the government. If the government fails in its duty to provide employment, it will give unemployment allowances to the people. The types of work that would in future help to increase the production from land will be given preference under the Act. Division of sectors as organized and unorganized. Workers in the organized sector enjoy security of employment. They are expected to work only a fixed number of hours. If they work more, they have to be paid overtime by the employer. They also get several other benefits from the employers. What are these benefits? They get paid leave, payment during holidays, provident fund, gratuity, etc. They are supposed to get medical benefits, and under the laws, the factory manager has to ensure facilities like drinking water and safe working environment. When they retire, these workers get pensions as well. The unorganized sector is characterized by small and scattered units which are largely outside the control of the government. There is no provision for overtime, paid leave, holidays, leave due to sickness, etc. Employment is not secure. People can be asked to leave without any reason. When there is less work, such as during some seasons, some people may be asked to leave. A lot depends on the whims of the employer. This sector includes a large number of people who are employed on their own doing small jobs such as selling on the street or doing repair work. Similarly, farmers work on their own and hire laborers as and when they require. How to protect workers in unorganized sector? The unorganized sector offers jobs that are the most sought after. But the employment opportunities in the organized sectors have been expanding very slowly. It is also common to find many unorganized sector enterprises in the unorganized sector. They adopt such strategies to evade taxes and refuse to all laws that protect laborers. As a result, a large number of workers are forced to enter the unorganized sector jobs, which pay very low salary. They are often exploited and not paid a fair wage. Their earnings are low and not regular. These jobs are not secure and have no other benefits. Since the 1990s, it is also common to see a large number of workers losing their jobs in the organized sector. These workers are forced to take up jobs in the unorganized sector with low earnings. Besides the need for more work, there is also a need for protection and support of the workers in the unorganized sector. Who are these vulnerable people who need protection? In the rural areas, the unorganized sector mostly comprises of landless agricultural laborers, small and marginal farmers, sharecroppers, and artisans such as weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters, and goldsmiths. Nearly 80% of the rural households in India are in small and marginal farmer category. These farmers need to be supported through adequate facility for timely delivery of seeds, agricultural inputs, credit, storage facilities, and marketing outlets. In the urban areas, unorganized sector comprises mainly of workers in the small scale industry, casual workers in construction, trade and transport, etc. And those who work as street vendors, head load workers, garment makers, rag pickers, etc. Small scale industry also needs government support for procuring raw material and marketing of output. The casual workers in both rural and urban areas need to be protected. We also find that majority of workers from the scheduled caste, tribes and backward communities find themselves in the unorganized sector. Besides getting the regular and low paid work, these workers also face social discrimination. Protection and support to the unorganized sector workers is thus necessary for both the economy and social development. Sectors in terms of ownership, public and private sectors. Another way of classifying economic activities into sectors could be on the basis of who owes assets and is responsible for the delivery of services. In the public sector, the government owes most of the assets and provides all services. In the private sector, ownership of assets and delivery of services is in the hands of the private individuals or companies. Railways or post office is an example of the public sector, whereas companies like Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited, Tisco or Reliance Industries Limited, RIL, are privately owned. Activities in the private sector are guided by the motive to earn profits. To get such services, we have to pay money to these individuals and companies. The purpose of the public sector is not just to earn profits. Governments raise money through taxes and other ways to meet expenses on the services rendered by it. Modern day governments spend on a whole range of activities. What are these activities? Why do governments spend on such activities? Let us find out. There are several things needed by the society as a whole, but which the private sector will not provide at a reasonable cost. Why? Some of these need spending large sums of money, which is beyond the capacity of the private sector. Also, collecting money from thousands of people who use these facilities is not easy. Even if they do provide these things, they would charge a high rate for their use. Examples are construction of roads, bridges, railways, harbors, generating electricity, providing irrigation through dams, etc. Thus, government have to undertake such heavy spending and ensure that these facilities are available for everyone. There are some activities which the government has to support. The private sector may not continue their production or business unless government encourages it. For example, selling electricity at the cost of generation may push up the cost of production of the goods in many industries. Many units, especially small scale units, might have to shut down. Government here steps in by producing and supplying electricity at rates which these industries can afford. Government has to bear part of the cost. Similarly, the government in India buys wheat and rice from farmers at a fair price. This it stores in its godowns and sells at a lower price to consumers through ration shops. There are a large number of activities which are the primary responsibility of the government. The government must spend on these. Providing health and education facilities for all is one example. Running proper schools and providing quality education, particularly elementary education, is the duty of the government. India's size of illiterate population is one of the largest in the world. Similarly, we know that nearly half of India's children are malnourished and a quarter of them are critically ill. The infant mortality rate of Orissa 41 or Madhya Pradesh 47 is higher than some of the poorest regions of the world. Government also needs to pay attention to the aspects of human development such as availability of safe drinking water, housing facilities for the poor and food and nutrition. It is also the duty of the government to take care of the poorest and most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas. So, dear children, you understood how an economy is divided mainly into three sectors: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. You also came to know how many types of unemployment exist. One is apparent, which simply means that the person has not got employment. And the second is hidden unemployment, where the person is on work but he is hidden unemployed. Because even if he leaves that job, it will have no effect on the production of that particular task. At the end of the chapter, you also came to know what are the organized and unorganized sectors. Apart from this, you also learnt about the sectors in the terms of ownership, public or private. So now fill in the blanks. Number 1. We prepare sugar by using dash as raw material. Your options are cotton or sugarcane. Yes, sugarcane. Right. Now look at the second sentence. Workers in the dash sector do not produce goods. Is it tertiary or agricultural sector? Yes, tertiary sector. Workers in the tertiary sector do not produce goods. Look at the third sentence now. Biscuit is a dash product. Yes, is it first or final product? Exactly, it is final product. Well done. Look at the next sentence. GDP stands for dash. Yes, gross domestic product or green domestic product? Think. Exactly, gross domestic product. You're right. Look at the fifth sentence now. A dash proportion of laborers in India are working in an unorganized sector. Large or small? Correct, large. A large proportion of laborers in India are working in an unorganized sector. Now choose the most appropriate answer. The sectors are classified into public and private sector on the basis of, your options are, number 1, employment conditions, number 2, the nature of economic activity, number 3, ownership of enterprises, and number 4, number of workers employed in the enterprise. Take your time, think. Correct. Third is correct. Ownership of enterprises. The sectors are classified into public and private sector on the basis of ownership of enterprises. Now look at the second part. Correct. Production of a commodity, mostly through the natural process, is an activity in private sector. Now look at the third part. GDP is the total value of dash produced during a particular year. Your options are all goods and services, all final goods and services, all intermediate goods and services, all intermediate and final goods and services. Correct. All final goods and services. GDP is the total value of all final goods and services produced during a year. So, my dear children, now I hope you have understood the sectors of an economy and what role all these three sectors, the main three sectors, the primary, secondary and tertiary, play in an economy. So, my dear children, with some more interesting facts, I'll see you again in the next chapter. Till then, stay safe, stay at home.